This month's Perf Talk is brought to you by the Guitar Friends. So improvisation is a big part of your playing. When you teach students, is it a skill that you require them to get into or learn?
No, I don't require it. Not that I have any students, but when I taught, at Fullerton, I worked with them in terms of whatever they needed. Usually they were learning traditional repertoire or something. But if they were interested in composition, I certainly worked with them on that. Though not too many were. Improvisation, I think only one student was really interested. But I think it should be required in classical studies, at least not necessarily to become completely proficient, but to get your feet wet and understand the process and how extensive it is. Because most classical players have still today a very poor grasp of fingerboard knowledge. Compared to jazz players, they're just completely deficient. To improvise, jazz players, they learn chord structures and all over the neck and understanding scales and modes and everything. And it's just, that knowledge is significant. And I'm so glad I went through that. Classical players often don't even know what chord they're playing. They might have to stop and look at it. But, it's all kind of unconscious to them. And I was always shocked at how little they knew. And even would admit they don't know. But so I think it should be required because improvisation would be the perfect, combination with fingerboard knowledge, a way to actually employ fingerboard knowledge. Because if you're going to do that, you're going to be using the fingerboard knowledge in an immediate fashion. So I think it should be, a requirement. So I wish more students were interested in it. In Andrew's Den, I have multiple fingerboard knowledge videos and also improvisation videos. And a lot of the students that sign up for the Den, seem to be very interested in improvisation and composition. They're just voracious, interested in music in general.
Especially for the improvisation that you do. I mean, for a lot of players, when they think of improvisation, it's take a solo, yeah. But you improvise like complete structures.
Yeah, of course I went through the solo thing. It's fun to play over changes, do single lines or whatever. But I like to play melody with accompaniment underneath or counterpoint, as much as I can. Yeah, right, create a complete piece. Or that kind of improvisation as a soloist, like just you playing, creating something.
Right. Because when I was younger, and I would listen to players like Joe Pass and all that, and he's improvising in multiple lines,
right?
Yeah, multiple lines, but mostly chord melody.
Right.
Mostly
master.
Chord melody.
He was the master, yeah.
Yeah, and then I found Ted Green, and improvisation suddenly was a lot more complex because it was lines. It's instead of chords, it's like instead of block chords, the chords became individual voices that went their own way.
Voice leading is what it is. Instead of, at first we learned we just grab chords, catch as catch can, but someone like Ted Green or Joe Pass, they would take one chord and would lead organically to the next chord, and the voices moved in a sensible way. That's simply voice leading in a jazz style. And that's what I try to do on Improvise, but I don't limit it to the style of jazz. I go with whatever style I want to do at the time. But I'm very conscious of voice leading, try to be. This is where the voices move in a sensible manner, and that's a definition of counterpoint, or at least the beginnings of it.
Right. So what are five things or so that are required knowledge for your foundation for that skill?
For improvisation?
Yeah, for improvisation.
5 things. Understanding harmony, like how harmony is structured, for example, in any major key. Make sure you have a sense of theory, like one chords, 4 chords, and 5 chords. Also 2, 3 minor and 6 minor, and getting a sense of how that works and how those sound to your ear. Because you can't improvise if you don't know what that sounds like. If you hear something in your mind and you can't tell is that a 5 chord or a 4 chord, you can't play it. You got to be able to understand what you're hearing or what you hear externally. So that's ear training. Then you have to begin to put that knowledge on the guitar. So, 1, 4, 5 in different keys, and being able to handle it. Then you got to increase your fingerboard knowledge so you can be in different places on the neck and do the same thing. You can use the cage system or whatever, caged. Theory again, scales, how chords arise from scales, the structure of scales, getting to know each note as an interval, compared to the root, like, in any key, you have the root, and the third sounds like, it's a major third for a major scale. The fourth, what that sounds like against the root. The fifth, what that sounds like. To get these in your ear, and then you got to identify what they look like and feel like on the guitar. What's a fifth on the guitar? We can just see them. We know it's different across the third and second string because the tuning is different, but everywhere else it makes these shapes. Familiarizing yourself, and then there's no substitute but doing it, and doing it immediately. You don't wait until some future goal of knowledge. You learn a little thing, and then you use that little thing right now, today, to cement it. And then tomorrow you learn another little thing, you use that, and you make yourself use it. Not trying to go way beyond yourself where you're frustrated beyond belief, but just doing whatever simple thing you have to do, whatever you're capable of doing, and add one little element. Make yourself use it to begin to understand it. Because if it's only dry technical knowledge up here, it's useless. If you're frustrating yourself, it's useless when you try to play. Or if you're waiting for some future goal of understanding before you start to do it, that's useless. It's got to be process, hand in hand, immediate. Learn something, use it. Learn something, use it. Develop like this. Otherwise, it's not organic. It doesn't work. I don't know. That's 5 things, but that's kind of the way I look at it.
That's awesome because, like, especially nowadays with the barrage of information, it's easy to get overwhelmed. A lot of people think that you got to learn all music theory before you could start improvising, which is
it's a wrong approach.
Yeah. The way I've been telling people to approach it is it's like writing. You have an idea, you write it down, and when you're limited by your vocabulary, then you get a dictionary or a thesaurus, and then you expand it, which is how I treat theory.
Right.
So if there's a sound that I'm looking for that I don't know yet, that's when I start hunting. That's right. As opposed to memorizing the book first and then starting to do it.
Yeah. Well, in my jazz days, every time I would learn a new chord, I would make myself use it that day. I'd be playing with the friend or whatever, and I would make myself use like a new dominant chord. I would put it in a 2-5-1. I would use it. Otherwise, you don't remember it. You don't learn how to use it. So every time I learned something, I would use it immediately.
That's awesome. Hi there. Perfecto Castro here, and I hope you're enjoying this episode of Perf Talk. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, like, and hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet. Ring that bell. This is just a quick break from the discussion so that I can take care of a few announcements. First up, Perf Talk is now a podcast, and it's available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you want to download the full episodes, you can go to my website, perfectodecastro.com, and click on the Perf Talk tab. And while you're at my website, I invite you to join and subscribe to my members-only area. It's kind of like Patreon, but it's Perftreon. For only $15 a month, you can download all the digital goods on my web store, from the video lessons to the song and album MP3s to the PDF tabs and Guitar Pro files. You'll also get into the members-only area where I host exclusive Perftreon-only perks, like advanced viewing of all my upcoming videos, more downloadable PDFs and lessons, my entire backing track library, and music releases that are not available to the public. Of course, your name will be included in the list of Perftreons featured in all of my videos. And as Perftreon grows, all the membership perks that I offer will grow as well. As of this video, here is the list of current Perftreons. Thank you so much for your support. And finally, I'd like to thank all of you who already bought their own Practice Mix Perfecto shirts and merch, like this mug and this hoodie. Sales from these shirts and merch helps me keep making these videos for everybody to enjoy. And when you get your stuff, don't forget to send me a photo either through my Facebook page or Instagram account. That way I can feature you in future videos, as I have done with my friends right here. Okay, now let's get back to Perf Talk. Okay, this is gonna be weird. Do you have a pet lick, like a signature? Yeah, a signature
You mean
Andrew
like
York.
a single line lick, or just or like a
Yeah, something
form
that
formless?
something that you play on top off the top of your head every time you pick up a guitar.
Well, you don't mean an exercise then. You mean something just you mean a lick, like just something that I play,
Yeah.
like a no. I mean, of course, back from the old days in jazz, you do learn licks. You learn complex things by maybe learning a complex line, right? And then you take it apart and learn how to use it. Sometimes you quote it directly. Sure, I still remember some of that stuff, but I don't play those every day, and I don't. At this point, I really try not to think that way. I don't like to think in pre-digested chunks that I've done before. Now, I have an advantage in that I've stuffed so much knowledge into my head that it's almost some of it's subconscious now, and I can draw from things and they can dissolve and reappear in ways that surprise even me. I'll often, when I'm improvising, I'll play a chord in a way I've never played before because I know I need three notes. I know what three notes I need, and I can suddenly see where they are, and I finger it in a way, just to get the notes. But it's not that I was thinking of a chord form at all. I was thinking in voices. These are the voices I need, and I just kind of grab them in some weird way. It's not a chord I ever learned. That's a very different way of approaching than that. This is an A flat chord, and this is the inversion I'm going to use. No, I'm just like, I know what I need by sound, and of course I know what it is by theory probably, and I just get the voices. This is a different way of thinking. And so, no, I don't really, I try not to do licks.
Okay, yeah, that's difficult because like typical guitar players, there's always that little phrase that they they play.
You can hear it.
Yeah,
With single line players, you'll hear it. Even great ones, you hear, oh, there's that thing they do. Yeah, and that's okay as long as you don't do it like ad nauseum. It's just you have, and a great one will springboard from that. They can alter it in path or develop it, but some of the less gifted ones won't. They just kind of this is lick 17B, and now I'm going to do lick 12C, and that's they've got this like book of licks. I've known players, like really good players, but that's what they did. They almost never really improvised. They just memorized a bunch of shit and did it. And of course I had licks too. I mean, you got to have them, especially when things are popping and bebop. Often it's very handy to have a toolbox of licks, but again, you do try to transcend them over time. That was my purpose.
yeah, build on them and make more licks, make more licks out of them.
Well, but I really tried to get away from the lick mentality because that's not improvising. You're just repeating. And improvisation is not repeating what you already memorized. Improvisation is that Zen-like moment in the present where you create something. And if you're playing a lick, you're not creating something. You're performing. You're just, doesn't matter if it's a source study or the Bach chaconne or a lick. You're just reiterating something. That's not improvising. It's not. It can be a vehicle toward improvising and can be a helpful way, but that's not the goal. It shouldn't be. This is not improvisation. Improvisation means you're making it up. And if you already know what you're going to play, you're not making it up. It's the antithesis of improvisation, actually.
Right. Okay. Earlier you mentioned the Yamur tuning. Is there any other piece of music that you didn't write that uses that tuning?
That I didn't write? What do you mean?
Like, because technically you could call it an Andrew York tuning, right?
Yeah, you could.
So
Yeah.
is there an Andrew York chord? You think a chord that you came up with that you feel that nobody else has used?
No, I mean you can't find a chord that nobody else has used. I mean, there's chords I love, there's sounds I love, there are progressions I love, there are relationships and intervals that I love, but it's not. I remember thinking kind of this way in my 20s. You'd find these chords, and then we became kind of disparaging about them at USC. Like some players, they call them splooge chords, this big old, like one of these. Which I use. I love. You get a big old, beautiful chord like of course, it's just an E minor 9, of course. But I mean, to get all these kind of weird chords people would do, some are more complicated. And they would base kind of what they were doing, their improvisations on them without any deep understanding. It's like one splooge chord to another splooge chord, but it wasn't compositional. And I'm so away from that. Chords don't, to me, exist in isolation. They exist as a relationship to what came before and what will come after. They're part of a progression. I mean, that's what a progression is. It moves. So, I mean, I think I just think very differently about a lot of this stuff. And there's places for all that. You start maybe when you're getting into jazz, you learn some splooge chords. It takes you, it's an avenue. It's a way to start processing this info. It's a way to get to identify with these beautiful sounds. Great. But to me, that it's anything that takes you higher is great, but it quickly becomes a limitation when you have a handle. I don't want to say master, but when you really begin to understand the process of what it's doing. If you stay there, you know, you're not progressing forward. So then that becomes a springboard to something else another way. So I'm kind of not in those mindsets at all. And it often seems funny to me to remember back that far and what that was like. It's just a different way. I mean, I'm just thinking in terms of counterpoint all the time. I'm just thinking the voice leading, everything right there, whether I modulate it or not. I'm not hunting for any chords. Like, I'm moving in a progression and hearing how the melody goes with it, whether it's in the top, in the middle, or the bottom, and the emotion there and the development. It's like a very different way of thinking. It's more of a journey. It's a journey. And it's not an easy one to take. I couldn't do it as well as I do it now. I mean, I always improvised pretty well, I mean, I improvised single line great, but, the last 5 years, a lot of things have come together and I'm able to improvise in a way that's very different. I'm not saying they're all great, they're not, but there is this capacity now to improvise in a much deeper way, and it's really, really a pleasure. But it leaves all that way of thinking behind. Licks and special chords have no meaning at all, in this.
Well, the main reason why I mentioned it, because when I was younger, I found a chord that nobody else used.
Well, no fair. You got all these strings.
No. Well, it's still on a 6-string. I just
always okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
and, and it's this chord. It's basically this chord. No,
yeah. So it's a minor 9. Yeah.
Yeah, minor 9. I think of it as an F sharp with an F sharp at 11 with a G sharp in the bass.
Yeah.
And then, and then I was learning one of your pieces, and it's like,
yeah.
it's like, oh, okay, it's not my chord anymore.
No. Yeah. Well, I remember, this is funny, and I mean this in a very beautiful, spirited way. It's like Ian Krauss, I respect so much. He's a great composer, right? Classical composer. But he got really in these pieces. He would like he would put the 9th an octave below the 3rd, and he found this very daring to have the minor 9. And from someone from a jazz background, it's like, yeah, but he was like, and that's the way classical composers are, because they haven't studied these more complex harmonic structures like jazz, and so it's funny, they'll find something, and then just. Ian didn't do it. He did it beautifully. He was brilliant at making these forms. But I remember his excitement over this. He was like, and I was thinking, yeah, that's cool. I know what that is. And but like I remember, I was another composer who was less gifted. Like Ian's brilliant, but and so he found a chord like, and he thought, this is the coolest. And he would wrote this piece that overused this in this classical setting. And of course, we just know this is a 13 flat 9. You hear this, but he just thought he had found the most amazing thing that hadn't been discovered, and it was a direct line to the face of God. And I'm like, no, it's a 13 with a flat 9 on top, and you listen to Joe Pass, you'll hear that in about 9 seconds, yeah. And used better. So it's a funny thing,
it's part of the training too, because I remember I played in a local big band with and we played standards, and the regular keyboard player couldn't make it. So the conductor also conducted a classical, like a pops orchestra, and that is primarily composed of classical musicians. So he recruited the classical pianist to play in the big band, and he was not digging it. He was having
I bet
a
he's having
difficult
trouble.
time because he would read a piece, he would read perfectly, and whenever he'd play one of those like flat nine chords, and he'd go, is that right? It's that doesn't sound right. It doesn't. And it was just I could literally see the hairs standing on on those forearms.
That was out of his worldview. It just, yeah.
So
Well, yeah, and then most classical players, they're confronted with a chord chart, and we just get the changes, and they're like, "Well, I don't know what to do with that."
yeah, or a real book.
Yeah, which is the same thing where you got just the chord symbols, and that's just a sketch. It's not what you play. That just gives you the bare bones of the progression. But then you're a jazz player, you're doing all this stuff around it.
Yeah, you're given the chords, the melody, and the feel, and you fill in all the rest.
Yeah. And you classical players, if they do know some chords, they play it literally. It's 4 measures of C major 7. They're chonk, 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 chonk. No, that's not actually. You don't do that actually. It's like you got to add some passing things. It just means you're on the 1 chord, right? That's all it means. And you move around and make. It's like,
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, because for those students of music history, like all the composers, they all improvised. Bach was a great improviser.
oh yeah.
He if he played mass 365 days a year, I don't think he'd have enough time to write every single one every day.
And I admire organists because to this day they keep that spirit alive. That most organists, classical organists, also improvise. They are the only really instrumentalists that keep that as part of the canon. That's part of their training. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, watching you in concert and Roland Diaz actually pretty much gave me permission to improvise in my shows too. When I was giving solo shows, and it's interesting because I used to have 2 modes in my head. I'd be like, oh, classical player, not classical player, and in this mode I'd have this freedom to just come up with things. Whereas when I switch on classical mode, I have to be like really strict and all that, strict and true to the spirit of whatever it is I'm playing. But after watching you guys, it's no longer 2 different modes with one soup.
Yeah. Well, right. That, for me too. There's really no difference now whether I'm playing a classical piece or one of my pieces or improvising. I approach it the same actually. So you got something for us to play, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's difficult to play to do it in real time.
Yeah, latency and all that, right?
Another option would be you're gonna have to play from the beginning because I have the clicks there too. You could do.
Oh.
Yeah, and then
why don't we do that right now? We'll get it done.
Okay.
Let's do that right now, and I'll click with it.
Okay, I think we're ready. Cut it off, Andy. I'll go first. that good?
Good.
Okay.
All right, man. This was fun.
That's awesome. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let's. I'm just gonna wrap this up.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So Andrew, what is there left for you to conquer?
Oh, I don't know that I've conquered anything. I just like to explore, you know. It's just a journey. But just want to keep writing, exploring counterpoint, before I get too old, just get down all the music I can, you know, express all the ideas and beauty I've got, and want to keep exploring mathematics, which I love, and, you know, going deeper into that world too. Yeah.
Awesome. So, for all of you who want to get deeper into everything that we talked about in this series, go check out Andrew's Den, yeah, and subscribe to Andrew York's channel. You've been very busy with that channel. Been very prolific.
Yeah. My wife and I've been filming continuously, and she's editing all the time, and plus the art videos and everything else we're doing. They're just not in the den; they're just on YouTube, you know. But yeah.
Go check everything out, because like meeting Andrew for me is one of the turning points in my playing. It's a huge inspiration. Very much so. Not just for music, but for like every time we talk, you know, it feels like my brain's gotten bigger.
Well, man, it's a pleasure. It's good to see you. With the pandemic, we haven't seen each other, so it's nice to see you on the screen there.
Yeah. So when all this is over, let's get together again, ramen or
ramen,
German beer or whatever.
Okay.
You know, it'd be awesome.
All right.
Okay. Thank you, and hit.
You're welcome.
Like, share, subscribe, do all the good YouTube things, and I'll see you guys in the next edition of Perf Talk.